chemtrails is one of those subjects that exist in the back of people's minds that deep down they know it's true, but at the risk of sounding like a nutcase to their peers, they openly state they do not believe the government is spraying our skies, or that what people are seeing is chemtrails, even when so much evidence exists to the contrary. Today they admit that in the spring of 2019 they will be conducting an experiment and are going to be spraying our skies, as if they haven't been for the past 60 years, in what they are stating as an attempt to block the sun in effort to cool the planet, even though NASA states the planet has been cooling for a few years now. Obviously there's more to it than what they are saying. Even so, people largely regard the idea of chemtrails, or the act of spraying our atmosphere with chemicals to geoengineer our atmospheric conditions and or weather, as a conspiracy theory. Unfortunately it isn't a conspiracy, as you will learn here. This is a document detailing a NASA operation to do just that in the 1980s. This same document states they have been doing these experiments for 20 years prior to this. So, in essence they have been conducting these experiments for over 60 years, almost 70. Instead of showing you video after video of planes spraying our skies, we figure we will show you the hard proof. The proof that NASA, our favorite liars, in conjunction with the Department of Defense, have been involved in experiments spraying our atmosphere utilizing different chemicals for over 60 years. Whom by the way just received a $21 billion budget. Your taxes hard at work spraying toxic chemicals into the atmosphere to rain down all over the globe. As stated in the following document, during the 1980s NASA freely admits the following, quote, "Historically, chemical releases have been conducted for scientific studies from several hundred sounding rockets over the past 25 years. Similar releases have been conducted from several orbiting vehicles at large distances from the Earth, and in one case at an altitude of 960 kilometers over polar regions. To our knowledge these experiments have not produced an adverse public reaction in the sense of concern over environmental effects. Similarly, the scientific community has not been concerned with environmental effects except for the alteration of the natural abundance of lithium at altitudes greater than 80 kilometers, and for this case it was, in general, found that the release experiments contributed to, rather than handicapped, the scientific studies that were affected." End quote. It goes on to mention two chemicals, often referred to in chemtrail discussions. Quote, "Barium metal and its soluble compounds are poisonous. However, much or most of the atmospheric input will reach the lower atmosphere and ground as barium sulfate, BaSO4, which is highly insoluble, chemically inert, and non-toxic." A simple, semi-quantitative discussion given as Appendix C demonstrates that the contribution of CRM sources to the existing barium in the biosphere, lowest atmosphere and upper ocean, is very small, of order 10.6 or smaller. Lithium. One would expect a detectable enhancement upper atmospheric lithium as a result of contemplated CRM injections, but there is no known hazard resulting from this. End quote. It says it didn't consider other chemicals because no known health risks exists from them, not because they didn't spray more chemicals, as you will soon see. Note the terminology used in the barium description. Quote, "Appendix C demonstrates that the contribution of CRM sources to the existing barium in the biosphere, lowest atmosphere and upper ocean." Upper ocean is an interesting choice of words, but we will move on to the environmental impacts they state. Remember this is 1980s. Quote, "Possible environmental effects. Upper atmospheric visual glows resulting from Li, Ba, SR, Na, etc. releases may be readily visible to the general public. They are transient, duration of some minutes, and produce no long-term or harmful effects. Effects on human health due to toxic materials, see Appendix C for an estimate of the perturbation due to barium. In view of both the small relative injection as well as the insolubility of at least part of the material, BaSO4, there is no data that would indicate a hazard. Effect on the ionosphere. Under certain conditions, high-latitude chemical releases appear to have triggered small geomagnetic substorms, W burning, private communication. It is thus possible that, under conditions of full-scale, high-latitude CRM operation, up to 10% of small geomagnetic substorms may occur somewhat earlier than in the absence of chemical releases. The principal effect of such a substorm is possible interference with ionospheric HF radio communication. The release of barium or other materials in the F region produces local enhancement in ionization, which could change HF radio propagation characteristics. However, the scale of these perturbations lies within the natural variability in the ionosphere, and it is unlikely that natural and artificial perturbations to HF propagation can be separately identified. Effects on weather and climate. It appears that at least some metals, Na, Mg, may reduce stratospheric ozone by a catalytic cycle. However, the quantitative effect of metals from CRM injections is unlikely to be significant. There are controversial suggestions of solar activity-climate interactions through the triggering of auroras or substorms, in example, geomagnetic activity. Insofar as releases may perhaps trigger substorms, there might perhaps be some interaction. However, we do not consider this level of perturbation to be of significant impact. End quote. They stated barium can produce enhancements in ionization, something required for and can be used to strengthen lightning discharges in storms. Also, breathing ionized air molecules. Potential danger with this is that humans don't usually breathe ionized air, and many studies show that electromagnetically charged particles can damage lungs. Also, if an oxygen molecule bonds with two others, it becomes O3, or ozone. Ozone can irritate airways and exacerbate breathing-related problems, but they conveniently not mention these dangers and relegated it to the effects it has on high-frequency radio waves. As you will see later and beginning to see now with the terminology and the clever craftsmanship of this report, the health effects are not of high priority in these experiments and often avoided or downplayed, as the results these experiments produce outweigh any environmental concerns which they admit to later. Quote: the CRM program proposes to create a multi-user facility, space shuttle launched, which interchangeably accommodates a large number of chemical canisters for a variety of alternate chemical release experiments during the timeframe 1982 to 1986. These limited and controlled releases into the upper atmosphere, ionosphere, and magnetosphere have a capability for contributing toward the solution of key problems for the Earth and other planets in atmospheric, magnetospheric coupling, space plasma physics, atmospheric dynamics and chemistry, gas dynamics, auroral phenomena, ionospheric communication disturbance, solar wind magnetosphere interactions, physics of comets, and more. Moreover, the ability to move ahead on projected economic utilizations of space involving large-scale operations such as those inherent to the Solar Power Station, SPS, and the creation of large space structures is, in part, dependent on knowledge of the environmental effects of releases in space. The CRM releases can provide the types of information necessary for understanding the relevant interaction mechanisms and their effects. These studies will be a valuable byproduct of the CRM science experiments. The findings are that adverse effects are not expected because of the small masses involved and the transient nature of the environmental changes induced by the chemical releases. No health effects are anticipated because the relatively small chemical release masses, diffused globally before reaching the Earth's surface, are greatly diluted and their concentrations are many orders of magnitude below even the most stringent toxic standards. Other than a short-term and operationally insignificant change in lithium in the upper atmosphere, no significant compositional changes are expected. Because of the small masses and low energies involved, no changes in the magnetosphere are anticipated. No significant effect on astronomical seeing is anticipated because the limited luminous clouds created low in the atmosphere are generally short in duration, while the deeper space clouds are of limited angular size and diffuse rapidly as they traverse the sky. Coordination with the astronomical community is recommended. Finally, no significant effect on weather or climate is anticipated since no significant changes in upper atmosphere composition or processes are expected. End quote. Leave it to NASA to say it's okay to spray toxic materials in the atmosphere because when they reach the ground, they anticipated, yes anticipated, no adverse health effects because of dilution. So they based the globe's population exposure to toxic materials on educated guess and sprayed the skies, as they have been doing for 20 years before this, and they continue to do so now to this day at unimaginable levels using aircrafts. Such massive spraying was hinted at while they were obviously soliciting some panel for a green light with these operations, but they received, in the very next paragraph which reads quote, "If the CRM program proceeds as proposed and according to plan, there should be no significant impacts on the physical, biological, or socio-economic environment as described above. Cost-benefit considerations indicate the high advantage of the program not only in terms of the scientific data to be obtained but also in terms of small-scale pilot tests of the massive releases involved in projected space engineering projects." End quote. Massive releases involved in projected space engineering projects. That's right, massive releases. What we are seeing today. In the following slides are lists of typical chemicals used in spraying and the experiments carried out, which include but not limited to wind generation, artificial comets, auroral modification, generation of acoustic gravity waves, atmospheric modifications and more. As far as public safety, they had this to say, quote, "It is considered that the benefits accruing from the proposed actions will far outweigh any environmental effects. Such effects are not considered significant on the basis of information currently available. The benefits which accrue are very considerable ones in solving key outstanding questions of the large-scale behavior of our upper atmosphere/ionosphere/magnetosphere environment and plasma behavior. The expansion of information due to this CRM program is also applicable to our exploration of the magnetosphere of other planets. Moreover, the data obtained also has a high degree of applicability to such applied areas as communications, and the general economic utilization of space and military needs. The environmental costs of the CRM are regarded as not significant. Some chemicals, in example, barium, will be introduced into the upper atmosphere in minuscule amounts having no health consequences. Perturbations to civilian communications are unlikely and at worst brief and transient. With appropriate scheduling and spacing, no effects on other spacecraft or any other space system are foreseen." End quote. Military needs, of course, and not significant, because of small amounts and the dangers they neglected to disclose. Not to mention those future massive releases this document doesn't cover. So what about a full environmental impact report, you may ask? Well, since NASA said there is little impact, they simply advised there shouldn't be one, as it reads here, quote, "It is recommended that no environmental impact statement be prepared since no detrimental environmental effects are foreseen. There are, however, several not well understood, potential impact areas of uncertain and low operational significance in which a continuing effort should be made. These include, A. Lithium lifetime in the upper atmosphere and, B. the lifetime of ions in the plasmasphere at low latitude distances of 2 to 5 Earth radii. Specific limited chemical releases are perhaps paradoxically among the best way to obtain information on A and B, and are recommended." End quote. Yep, you heard that right. The best way to know exactly what these chemicals will do, and how long they will last in our atmosphere, is to release them into the atmosphere. This is the old, we need to pass the bill to know what's in it routine and methodology. So what were they worried about besides their data? Well, what you the people thought of it, of course. So they all but advised a propaganda campaign to inform and calm any concerns before they got started, as it reads here, quote, "The CRM program has a potential for public controversy because of the reaction that might be generated by the sighting of the luminous clouds involved in many of the chemical releases if there is no public preparation. It is considered that any adverse public response can be virtually eliminated by an active public information program that will reach and inform the population in the appropriate areas prior to conducting a release. It would also be advantageous to inform certain specialized groups, such as radio amateurs and the astronomical community. Such a program has been conducted in the past for specialized chemical release operations and has elicited positive and favorable response." End quote. A favorable response because NASA would never lie to us, right? They would never try and make the public believe they were doing something they were not, right? Nor would they have anything to gain from making the public believe they were interacting with things that wasn't really there, in an environment they were not really in. Now would they?
See the hair?
I don't know, we're gonna have to do something for you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Watch this.
I know.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
I know.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
I know.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Watch this. Can everybody float around for us? That was really cool, Chris.
And remarkable things to see when you look out the cupola. I guess so far from me, I like the waters, the shallow waters in the Caribbean or the atolls in southeast Pacific, or southeast Pacific, or
Now would they? Apparently even with a $20 billion budget, mistakes still happen. This poor bloke was caught with his pants down interacting with a virtual object someone forgot to pipe into the live feed. These simple lies are available for anyone to see, and there are many, many more examples. Point is, if they will lie about being in space to the public, would they lie about the safety of these chemicals and the threat they pose to the environment and the public? You know the answers to these questions. Some people have been studying what these chemicals are doing to our...
You look up at the sun and you see a white haze. That is aluminum floating in the air right now, and it's coming from the aircraft.
There's a huge amount of aluminum being found because these sprays have aluminum, strontium, barium, manganese, and there's a lot of argument that aluminum is very common to be found, but aluminum is only common in a bonded form. It's not common in a free form, and we're finding high rates of free aluminum in the soil, which is not natural.
The metal compounds that are being used are environmentally dangerous. We need to be monitoring them. We need to be testing them.
Okay, these previous guys, I've watched exactly what they do, and yes, they are correct. I've seen exactly the same stuff, so ditto marks on those. You want some figures? Okay, latest water test, tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1,000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil?
We have clouds in the sky we've never seen before. Almost every day I'm seeing clouds I've never seen before. And NASA has been even named a few of these new clouds. It's really interesting, but now
individuals. Moreover, even if just one lie can be proven, and we just showed you 2, and again there are many more, does that not call into question everything they NASA, have ever said and done? It should. What sort of impact you think some of these metals you have unwittingly ingested in high concentrations will have in a 5G environment? What's obvious is these two blatant human experiments to exposures of not only toxic electromagnetic radiation and all their effects, but the impact those effects is when combined with the effects from exposure to the chemicals and metals found in chemtrails we have been ingesting for well over 60 years, especially during the last 20 years, should be a grave concern to every human being on this planet. The poisoning of humanity must stop, and it only stops when we the people demand it to stop. Act like your children's futures and lives depends on it, because they do. This was a collaboration with our Hackback Anonymous family. Much love and respect to all of you. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Wake up.